when we come back after this break and talk about the election in Russia. Very consequential for the entire world. What happens there is going to have a big impact everywhere. And I think the outcome is predictable, since Vladimir Putin really doesn't have any real opposition to speak of. Kevin Michelizzi will explain to us when we come back why the election is still very important, and he'll highlight some of the truly interesting aspects of the electoral process and this election in particular, why it's unique and why the election happening now during the time of this crisis, this conflict, this war in Ukraine is so important, and how it's all playing out. I mean, how do you vote in Crimea or in other areas where you really still have conflict going on? Kevin will explain all of that to us when we come back.
The information war is raging. Truth without integrity is worth nothing. Maverick News. Because those who have power and those who seek it must be held accountable.
The world is watching.
Join our family of truth seekers. Donate today and add your voice to the chorus of Maverick Knights. Donate at maverickdonations.com. Truth. Integrity. It's the Maverick way. Maverick News. The world is watching.
And welcome back, Kevin. Great to have you here. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me again, Rick. That's what I'm here for.
The election is on. Today is the first day of voting. Can you explain, before we get into the nitty-gritty on this, how the process works over there? It's more than just one voting day.
Yeah, they have, it's kind of unique over here compared to like the United States, which I'm used to. The United States, you go in and depending on the state, you may have to prove who you are or maybe not, or you get your mail-in ballot and, you can mail in your wife's or your kids, whatever. Here, they require your internal passport in order to vote. So everybody's assigned a polling station near where they're registered to live. And if you can't go there before the 11th of March, you were required to go on. They have the state services portal, which is called Gosislugi. It's got all your information. It's got your internal passport, your tax ID, all this information. And before the 11th, you had to go in there and you had to, they called it a remote voter. And you click a button in there and you say, I'm not where I belong. I'm going to be here. And they give you the voting location where you're going to be. And then that disallows you from voting in the original spot. And they also have, in-person voting. You go in, you show them your passport, and they have a list in each polling location of the people that are allowed to vote there. And they'll mark off your name. They give you a ballot. They sign it and stamp it saying that you voted. It isn't tying the ballot to you, but it's, saying this was an official ballot and you were signed off the list of voters. And something new that they have this year, 29 regions were allowed to do remote voting. That was Kherson, Donetsk, the other regions up over there, and Crimea, Moscow itself was allowed to do this, but several regions you could go on before the 11th of March again onto the state services site and register for remote voting. And I've actually got a video about that to show you how that actually worked. It's pretty secure. You can't vote twice. The minute I signed up for it, it removed me from the local polling station list. So if I went over there and I tried to vote and I claimed I didn't vote, they would say, "You're not on our list."
Okay. Do you want to run the
So-
video? Do you have it queued up there?
Yeah, I actually have the ballot too. This is the in-person ballot.
I see.
Pretty simple. I have a translated version for you. Translation is okay, but up in that right corner is where the stamp and the signatures go. If it doesn't have two signatures in the stamp from the polling officials at the polling station, the ballot is not valid. That top section, all that text basically gives you instructions about what will invalidate your poll if you mark two boxes, if you don't mark in the box, things like that. And then, of course, it lists alphabetically the candidates. And, a lot of people will ask, why does the guy with the name of K, starting with K, at the bottom of the list if it's alphabetical? Well, KH is actually one letter in Russian, and it's an X. So that's why he's on the bottom, as you can see here.
I see.
So this is the official ballot. You check the one box. It's just the president's, and then you slip it into a locked box. Now, they do have some clear boxes, plexiglass boxes. They are locked, but you're instructed on this paper to slide it in face down so that people can't see who you voted for. Now,
I see.
could have done this. I didn't want to stand in line, so I signed up for the remote voting. And this is kind of how it works right here. So this is the Gosislugi, the state services site. I said I want to vote because I'd pre-registered. It takes me out to the registration site. And I click that first button. And that says, yep, I want to vote right now. It makes me re-identify myself through the state services site again. So I had to log in and get a code from the Authenticator app. This is just a guarantee that you are who you are when you're voting. And this is telling me I have one ballot available to me. I can vote once. You have to read all the instructions, agreeing to what will invalidate it, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they're going to send me an SMS to verify it's me. And here's the official voting location. And it says, okay, you're ready to vote. Click on the button. And here's the ballot. So it's saying check one box. But before you can check any of these boxes, you have to go all the way down to the bottom so that you've read all the candidates and the information, where they were born and stuff. I didn't let anyone see who I voted for, but I clicked a box, checked okay, and it comes out and it says you voted. So to verify that I couldn't do it twice, I went into the system a second time here. And I said, I want to vote. And it says, you already cast your ballot. Sorry, Jack. So this is how secure it is. And it's interesting to me because, in the United States, they have this big thing. The Republicans want voter ID and the Democrats don't. And it works. It makes sure that you cast one vote. And you can't change it once you send it. So
you feel it's very secure because over here, people are very skeptical of anything digital, any online sort of voting systems. A lot of people are worried about that, but your experience with it has been positive?
Yeah, because nobody can get into this system but me. You saw that I had to log into the initial state services site. It took me to the voting site, and it made me re-verify myself with logging in again and then getting a text message. So that whole site is tied to my passport and my phone number here. So nobody can get in but me because I get the text messages. Having an ID at the polling station, they make you register for these remote services or alternate locations by March 11th. so that they can print out the valid polling lists and send them out to the polling stations. So they had, 4 days to get them out. And if you're not on that list, you're not voting. And if you are, you have to present your passport, which is your official ID here. And I hear a lot of people in the West complain about, well, why does Russia have this, internal passport? It's not right. You shouldn't have to have it. But Americans should think about the fact that they all have Social Security cards. So the United States has a tracking system on you too. I don't know about Canada, but people just don't think about things like this. You got a driver's license you can use for an ID. People who don't have a driver's license can get a state ID. So it really isn't any different. My medical services are tied through this site. I can go in there. I can register to make a doctor's appointment. It will send me a text message and an email before the appointment, the day before, saying, hey, you got an appointment with this doctor at this clinic at this time. So everything in Russia is tied to this system.
And pretty convenient. I guess that's the big upside with it, right? Would that increase voter participation?
It does. The last election, they had 65% of people turned out, and they're estimating it'll be about 75% this year.
Wow, that's much higher than it is over here.
Yeah.
I think the last time around we had only about maybe 40% of people voting, somewhere in that range, which is frustrating for for people who want to see more political involvement from the public. That has to be among the highest in the world.
Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty darn high though.
Yeah.
So, remote locations, this public services website, this guy here, this is the current number of people who have already voted. It's 8 p.m. here. Polls opened at 8 in each region. So, there's 11 time zones in Russia. So some of them opened, late last night our time. But over 31% of people have already voted. And, so almost as high as the West gets.
Now, you don't really get results, though, until the final day, right? Which is on Sunday?
Officially, we aren't supposed to have final votes until the 18th. But we'll have preliminary results at 9 p.m. our time. So that's 2 p.m. your time on Sunday. And they will have the preliminary results, and they will release them at that time.
What's the mood like over there? Here, because of what we've seen over the last, I don't know, at least half a dozen elections. Well, maybe even before that, you can go all the way back to maybe all through American history. People have been skeptical of the results of elections. Do people have much confidence in the system over there? I'm curious to kind of compare the level of public confidence between the West and what's going on in Russia.
Yeah, people here have great confidence in the system. You can pretty much guarantee what the results will be at the end of this election just by talking to people on the street. The polls, the Levada Center in Moscow, which is a Western backed NGO. They are considered a foreign agent here. It's a company my daughter worked for last summer. And they are not pro-Russian. They are not pro-Putin. And they are estimating 68% for Putin, just based on their polls in Russia before the elections.
Well, in last election, I read that he was able to capture 77% of the vote.
Yep, something like that. So Levada is saying that turnout will exceed 70% and Putin will win over 80% of the vote. Another poll said turnout will be 71%, Putin will get 82%. Another poll says about 69.8 and Putin will get 81%. So the polls are all in a similar place on this. And like I say, you talk to people and they're, I'm voting for Putin. They'll tell you, even though, we here in the West don't tell anyone who you're going to vote for. People blatantly say, this is who I'm voting for. I support him. Now, there's a small faction of people, the former Navalny supporters who, are very anti-Russian. They tend to be the ones who go out and protest a lot. They try to get people to vote alternately. They actually have a candidate that they're supporting this time. But really, these candidates are real candidates. They're viable candidates. But most people are pro-Putin, and it's because of what he's done for this country. It's been called an authoritarian government. It is, but it's what Russians like. It's what they desire. The whole, have a true democracy. Reality is it is a democracy here. Whoever gets the most votes. It isn't this delegate system like the United States has. Whoever gets the most votes, as long as they get 51% or more, becomes president. If nobody gets that 51%, then they have a second election between the two top guys, much like Turkey does. Same sort of system. But, people are confident that it's correct. There are international observers. I've seen a lot of stuff in the press the last couple of days about, Russia didn't invite the OSCE observers, therefore the election will not be valid. Well, reality is OSCE wasn't invited to observe the elections because of what's went on in Ukraine with the OSCE. They were giving away Russian positions. They found documents saying this. So they're not trusted, much like the rest of the West on negotiations. So
in Russia, you do vote specifically for the president and then for local candidates. Is that how it works?
Nope. The only ones on this ballot are the president contestants.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's
Nobody
just the presidential election.
Local elections are held separately on a different date. Okay. And each region determines when those elections will be.
And so because it is a federation, it's not like a parliamentary system. People are voting directly for the president.
Right. That was the whole ballot, 4 whole boxes. That was it. When I went in, that's the choice I had, those 4 boxes.
Okay. So you do have some opposition there. You mentioned,
yes.
The party that Navalny was leading. He, of course, passed away. They must have somebody else in his place. Is that the case? You said they have a candidate now. What's happening with that party?
Yeah, his party has pretty much gone away, but they've kind of thrown their support behind, I believe it was Slutsky. And he is from, don't remember the name of it. It's some, ultra Democrat. Let me see if I can find it here. The name of it is the Liberal Democratic Party of the Soviet Union. And it's a party that's been around since 1989. The guy who was heading it died a couple of years ago, and the Slutsky guy took over the party. Now, the main theme of his election program, now he's not the guy that Navalny was behind. So his platform is he supports the special military operation and completing it with the goals that Putin has put forth. But in addition, he plans to deal with migrants differently and writing off debts to the regions and redistributing the funding elsewhere. So he's kind of a semi-Putin-ish platform guy. You know, Putin is running on everything that he stated in his address to the Federal Assembly back a couple of weeks ago. So it's social programs, new national projects, changes in the economy, social services, and he offered to give graduates of high school the opportunity to retake the unified state exam to increase their score to get into better universities. It's kind of like the US's, what do they call that? It's been so long since I've dealt with it. But, you know, that test they take to get into universities.
The SATs?
Yeah, the SATs. So the other guy, which is Danikov, and he is from the New People. And these guys are all members of the Duma, so they didn't have to get the 100,000 signatures to be on the ballot. And he's focusing on expanding civil and business freedom, you know, combating new bans and restrictions, and strengthening the roles of the regions in the economy, and spending in favor of health and education. So he's for peace and negotiations. Haritonov, he is the Communist Party guy.
He's the guy who, I think I read that he made some video where he pretended to walk into the Kremlin and sit in the office after saying, "We've played with capitalism enough," or something to that effect, right? But
yes, he's the guy who said we've played with capitalism and enough is enough. And he's, you know, running on changes in the socioeconomic policy and has called for the development of industry and agriculture. He isn't the agricultural minister. So, you know, that's kind of where things are at. But the one guy, the Navalny guys are going with Danikov because he's against the special military operation. So
yeah, and Putin, his platform, I guess, is to his pitch is that he'll continue to do what he has been doing, and
Yep.
Can you kind of give people an idea of what he has done to strengthen the country, the economy, the social fabric, etc.?
Yeah, well, one of the things I've physically seen out my own front window here is we've got a historical site. And one of his promises was to continue improving historical sites for tourism for Russians. And they've actually been refurbishing the outside of this castle near us, or palace, for about a year now. So he's doing this with new sites as well if he's reelected. And, you know, this castle was built in something like the 1600s. And they're improving it to give Russians places to go and visit, since we're limited for going out of the country at this time. So he wants to make tourism bigger. You know, Russians should visit Russia is one of his, you know, calls. And to do this, he is subsidizing airplane tickets. He's giving young people the ability to go to these places free, and, you know, things like that. Now, he's also trying to strengthen the family. This is something that he's been doing over several years, and he wants to improve money that goes to, you know, women who have more than 3 children. Actually, I don't recall the exact number But if they have 3 or 4 children, they will give them a home for the family to live in. So for each child they have, they get a certain amount of money, and it's like 100,000 per child, $500,000 at 4, something like that. And what it is it's to stimulate people having larger families, because the population has been decreasing in Russia for many years, and he's been boosting that over the last several years. So these new programs to put more money into that will then get people to have more children. Now, they don't hand them $100,000 and say, or 100,000 rubles and say, here you go. They put it into an account for the mother. She has to be registered when she has the child anyway. So it goes into a special account, and they can give receipts towards that account for things for the children. Or they can hang on to the money and put it together with the new house. They can buy furniture, things like that with it if they have enough children. And he's increased pensions beginning April 1st. So again, elect me and I'll increase your pensions, money to disabled people, a lot of the medical programs. He's building new clinics and hospitals. We have a new clinic that's supposed to go in here. They've bought the land for it already. Our clinic is an old Soviet 1970s building that's in pretty rough shape with pretty old equipment, and they're going to modernize it. They've already done this in Yalta, where they've got a brand new medical center there. I go there often and I pay for my services, but I can get an MRI for 3,000 rubles at this new clinic with brand new equipment, which is about $35. So,
Wow.
or I can wait in line at the other clinic, and maybe I'll get it in a month.
So they actually have injected some privatization into the system, so you can pay, if you need an MRI, you can pay $35 and get it in a more timely fashion.
Yeah, and it's really, this is what the one guy is against with the capitalism. I can go to the clinic in Yalta to see a specialist that they don't have at our local clinic. And if I make an appointment, I may wait a month, 2 months to see this specialist, or even be put on a list and they'll call me when they have an opening. Right. But if I pay money, I can see that specialist today.
I've been saying that Canada needs to adopt a system just like that. That's what I've been saying.
It's a trivial amount of money for an American, It's, you pay it's $10-15 US, and you see that specialist the same day.
Yeah, it just makes sense to me. And then that money goes back into the system, and that can be used to support the healthcare of other people who can't afford to pay the fee. So it's a win-win all the way around, and helps keep the system working. But hey, nobody wants to listen to me over here.
Yeah. Well, I needed one test because I wanted one of my prescriptions increased. And I get a disability pension from the Russian government, and they pay for most of my medicines. And, I became a citizen the 1st of last year. And, I had to go to the specialty hospital in Simferopol and be admitted to the hospital. And they can admit me for up to 12 days. They check everything. They did EKGs and ultrasounds, and they checked me from head to toe just to get this one prescription increased. It cost me $0 to do that. And it's a brand new hospital. It's 7 floors, and they have most every specialist there, all brand new equipment, brand new building. It didn't cost me a penny. Now, I had to get a bunch of tests and stuff done to get in ahead of time. But, I originally asked for this around the first week of February. I went up there the end of February, so it wasn't a real long wait.
So really, what
And
you have is you have a hybrid system. It's
yeah,
the best of this and the best of that, and it's coming together, and they
and
make it all sort of work.
this is why most Crimeans support Putin, because this is something that he had the Duma put in place.
Yeah.
And, you know, it is authoritarian here. You know, people say, well, you know, they have a Duma, the Duma makes the laws. It's correct. But if Putin says, this is what I think should be done, they will do it. No doubt about it. He doesn't make promises that the legislators don't follow through with. But he doesn't direct them to do this specifically. He says, I want this outcome. You need to improve clinics. You need to improve the immigration process for Westerners. Now, this draws some negative attention in Russia. Many Russians don't want Westerners here. A lot of Westerners that look to come here are a little, you know, and they don't want that here. They're afraid that it will become, you know, little villages of Americans with liberal ideas. So Russia has put in place a much easier system. People now can apply from their home country and provide their documents. And if they're approved, now that's a big if. They check your social media, they check, you know, Scotland Yard, the FSB does an investigation. It's difficult to get in here. But, you know, this is a process. Putin said, I want to make it easier for conservative Westerners to come to this country. And the Duma has changed the laws on this every couple of months for the last year. We help people come here from the West, and it's hard to keep up with those laws. It changes so often. Putin says, simplify this or simplify that. And it takes them a couple of months to put things in place, but they do it.
And you became a citizen about a year ago, and is that what gives you the right to vote?
Yes.
And how long is the process normally take for someone to actually become a citizen?
It took me, I started in summer of 2022. I had to get, they call it a quota, which was permission to apply for residency. I got that based on my wife being a citizen. Because she was Ukrainian and she came here, she got a simplified process and she could get permanent residency right away and then citizenship about 8 months later. I had to get this quota. It took me 2 months to get that. Then I applied for temporary residency. But because I could apply for permanent residency 8 months later then. When I applied for permanent residency based on my wife, it took me about 4 or 5 months to get that. And then I had to wait 8 months before I could apply for citizenship. Now, I could apply for citizenship right away because the law at the time is you had to be married to a Russian woman for at least 3 years. And because I had been married to her even before she became a citizen, you know, I could do it. So it took me about 3 years. Now they've changed the law. You can no longer come if you're just married to a Russian woman. You have to be married to a Russian woman and have a natural child with her. But you don't have to wait the 3 years anymore.
I see.
So,
well, yeah, so
I still say it's about 3 years to get citizenship.
Okay. I think that's an even faster process than what they have in Canada or the US, actually. Well, it depends. I think it depends on the situation, but I'm certainly.
Yeah, it depends. You know, they have that length of marriage thing in the US. When my wife came to the United States, it took her about a year to apply for citizenship and obtain it.
Well, you know, the more I learn about Russia and the way the society is structured, how the systems work there, I see more similarities between, you know, where I live and where you are now in Russia than things that are different. It all is very, very similar ultimately. Just to
Yeah,
kind of come back, go ahead. Did you want to comment on that?
Oh yeah, I was going to say it's like the medical is very similar to Canada. If you want to wait, you wait. If you want it right away, you pay.
Yeah. Well, if you want to wait, you get to wait here. If you want to pay, you don't get to pay over here.
Yeah, okay.
So
You get to go to the United
yeah,
States and pay.
yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Which is why
Yeah.
we should allow people to pay, so we don't lose the the activity and the revenue. But anyway, that's a whole other topic of discussion that we could have on another day. To
Yeah,
come back to the election, here in the West, I'm seeing a lot of reports, of course, very predictable, where they're just dismissing the legitimacy of the election out of
of
hand,
course.
right?
They always do.
Yeah. Um,
I know there's international observers here. I know one of the guys who's observing in Simferopol. So, and they've installed video cameras at all the polling locations. So they are watching to make sure that nothing goofy goes on. Now, a lot of people say, well, I heard this one just this morning. People in the new regions, the Donbass area. Well, gee, it's occupied by Russia, and they're telling you go vote. So who are you going to vote for? Because they're afraid. Actually, they aren't. I know a lot of people in those areas, and they are very pro-Russian. They're freely voting, not under guns like they claimed, with the secession votes that took place. I actually was there and took pictures of the voting locations and people voting. Now, what they've done is they have mobile voting places that they've had up there for a couple of weeks, and they allowed early voting there because of the conflict. So they would drive these mobile voting stations around and stop and let people vote. And if they weren't Russian citizens yet, but residents of Donbass, they could vote on their Ukrainian documents. So, same process that they have here. No military forcing them to vote. Where you do see the military getting involved is closer to the front line. It's dangerous. There's shooting and shelling going on. So they obviously take voting boxes. And if people can't leave their homes or something, they go out and go to their home. They actually will do that anywhere. If you can't get to a voting place, you can register and they'll bring it to your house and you slide it in the box. But at the front line, they do use soldiers to bring those voting boxes around, simply for safety.
what about at the polling stations? We're seeing reports here, and I have seen some video of, some disruptive activities. It looks like someone threw a Molotov cocktail into a polling station, I think in St. Petersburg, while shouting pro-Ukrainian slogans. Is there concerns about those sorts of things?
Yeah, they've had warnings out for people to be careful because they are expecting such attacks. This goes back to what we've talked about, recently, where Ukraine is going more to guerrilla warfare. So this is a weekend where they've said they will try to disrupt the elections, but they said we aren't going to allow it to be disrupted. Now, we do have some isolated cases like you're seeing over there. Again, what makes people watch the news? Got to show bad Russia and how bad things are at the polling stations. But they're few and far between. Now, we in Crimea are expecting, we haven't had drone and missile strikes since last time I talked to you. And we're expecting that we're going to get a slew of drones and missiles tomorrow and Sunday, trying to disrupt the elections again. But it doesn't work. People just go about their lives. They trust the air defenses will work. It's just things trying to terrorize Russians and get them to protest, overthrow the government, really. This is really the goal. I saw it just in the last couple of days where the West has been advising Ukraine to try to bring unrest to the Russian people. And that's all this is.
Sure. Yeah, and I've seen reports of vandals going into another polling station, dumping green dye into ballot boxes. Why green? I'm not sure. Maybe it's an environmental thing. I don't know. Any idea what that might be about?
Yeah, the green dye is very Ukrainian. They've been doing that since 2014 when they took their own pro-Russian politicians and they dyed them with this, I don't remember what it is, but it's some green dye. And it's actually an antiseptic. I've got a little bottle of it here for our construction guys. They get hurt and they squirt it on, but it's difficult to get the green off. And, so this is what they dunk people in, they throw it all around. So it's a very pro-Ukrainian method of protesting.
Wow. Is there anything else about this election that comes to mind? I think it's almost difficult to make something like this exciting when the outcome is already so obvious. It's Putin all the way, basically, right?
Yeah. And of course, it would be much more interesting to make stories out of it if we got, the actual results being posted as they were coming in. We could say, oh, look at that. This guy got an extra percent or, so it's, not a lot you can say. Everybody knows that Putin will win. The other guys, between the three of them, you're talking, 5-6% each. So, that means Putin gets about 80%.
And that means that at the end of this exercise, Putin will be reinstated for another 6 years.
6 years. And because of the constitutional changes, he actually can run for one more term after this.
So 12. So how old is he now?
71.
71. So, well, okay. So it's possible. It's possible.
He'd be finishing that second term younger than Biden. So.
Yeah. Who is, I think, the oldest president in U.S. history, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And this Partonov, he is actually up there too. I don't recall his exact age, but he's considered the oldest candidate. Let me see if I've got his date of birth here. No, but he's the oldest candidate, this Haritonov. But he's like 74 or something like that. Not much older than Putin.
Well, it's I think generally speaking, better to have older people in positions of power like that, especially when they have access to the big button, because older people bring more experience and hopefully more wisdom and more level-headed thinking, not so prone to maybe an emotional outburst and smashing the button, which would be a disaster.
Because as long as they have a stable mind.
That's the thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we have that over here in any of the choices before us in this U.S. presidential election, let alone here in Canada. I'm kind of worried. Yeah.
Yeah. But, I did see a Western report this morning that while Putin's 71, he's older than, the average age of a man living in Russia. And actually, that's not correct. The average age right now is 76.
Oh, is that
but
right? Okay.
Putin is exceptionally healthy. I mean, he's out there on the ice playing hockey with hockey guys. And now, granted, if I'm out playing hockey with the president, I'm probably not going to hit him too hard.
Yes.
But,
Me neither. No.
he does that. He's out flying fighter jets and, he does go hunting out in the woods. These bare-chested pictures of him are actually this is what he does on his vacations. And this is one of the things that he said. He wants people to be more healthy so that they will live longer. So he's investing money in sports and physical activity for people. So they want him to follow his lead. So he's one of these guys that says, I'm not going to ask you to do what I don't do myself.
Well, it is it's been a very successful public relations campaign for him. There's no question about that. The images of him riding a horse shirtless and and flying in fighter jets, that's much more effective in building public confidence and trust than, falling down the stairs of Air Force One.
Yep, this is true.
So you have election coverage live on Sunday evening. Tell us what you have planned.
Yeah, Sunday evening, myself and Joseph Rose, who is an American who lives in Moscow, we are doing a dual live stream, both of our channels, and we're starting at 9 p.m., which is when the first results are supposed to be released. Now, we also understand that it's 9 p.m. Russian time, which means it could be somewhere between 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. So, yeah,
I understand.
So we will see, but we've got a couple of politicians that will come on for 5-10 minutes and talk about the elections a little bit. We've got a couple of people who have newly voted in the elections this year in person who will share their experience. My wife will come on and do some comparisons between voting in the United States, voting in Ukraine, and her voting in Russia. So looks to be in a, if nothing else, will create some excitement until we actually get some results.
Okay.
The results that we know we're going to see.
Right. And tell people how they can find your channel for that coverage.
You can go to American Crimea on YouTube, and that's where you'll find us live. So we expect to have some special guests showing up unannounced. And
okay, well, we'll look forward to that. Kevin, is there anything else you'd like to add or think that we might have missed?
Nope, I think that's about it. We did miss something. People outside of the country voting. Russia's gone to great lengths. That same website that I showed you a little while ago, which right now 35%. So the numbers are going up. They've got a whole list of places you can click on here, but they've got one where you can find out where your local polling station is if you live outside the country. Now, the United States is not on the list. I don't know why, but you can vote in the United States if you're a Russian citizen at the embassy or either of the two consulates, and that's all. Now, my daughter, fortunately, she's registered as living in Crimea, so she could vote online through the online app. And many other people, registered to those regions could too. But they do have a list of all the other countries, and they've got multiple polling places set up in many cities across the world. So they really go out of their way to get their people to come in and vote.
And just lastly, this online voting system, it isn't run by Dominion Voting Systems by chance, is it?
It is not. It's it's run by the Russian government.
Okay. Kevin Michelizzi, thank you for joining us again on the program. Really, really very helpful. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Rick. Good to be here.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.